The man accused of opening fire at Los Angeles International Airport remains in critical condition and unable to speak, but more is being learned about why he went on this rampage. 23-year-old Paul Ciancia, who recently moved to the LA area from New Jersey, left a note stating that he made the conscious decision to try to kill multiple TSA officers and, quote, instill fear in your traitorous minds, end quote. Investigators are still trying to figure out the motivation for his hatred toward the agency. Joining us now by Skype is Jack Cloonan, a global security expert and former FBI agent. Jack, always good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Good to see you, Debbie.
Well, you know, reportedly, as we just said, this shooter's goal was to show how easy it was to get a gun into the airport, in addition to killing a TSA agent, and he certainly did that. So, what needs to change with the security measures at airports to prevent someone else from doing the same thing?
Well, it's a formidable challenge, clearly. The TSA cannot impose its will on every airport operator, and so they will have to be working with local airport authorities to figure out where do they draw the line on security and how far out do these concentric circles of security have to go. Clearly, Mr. Ciancia accomplished what his principal objective was. One, as you described, to get the gun into the airport without being seen. He put it in a bag. And number two, he did instill fear. I think the bigger question that we all have to answer is, what is the public willing to accept to protect its security? The public plays a huge stake in all of this, and TSA will be loath, in my judgment, to impose its will arbitrarily. It will seek the public support. But to the motive, and I think that's really what everybody always gets at in situations like this, I think that in this case, Mr. Ciancia, in his view of the New World Order, sees any government official, whether it's the TSA, frankly, or anybody on the local level, as their enemy. And this undercurrent that we hear in our dialogues today on many levels about anti-government rhetoric, sometimes it inspires people. So we always talk about homegrown terrorists, and I don't want to suggest that this was a terrorist act, but look did he instill fear, which is a primary component of terrorism? It is. Was he influenced perhaps by what he's reading on the internet or what he chooses to read? And was he in fact inspired by homegrown rhetoric? We have to really look at this, and all of us, ourselves in the media and others, have to be very careful about how we choose to discuss issues, because what we say can inflame and inspire people to take action, in this case, deadly action.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about the investigation in just a second, but let me stay on this topic of security. As the reports are coming out, what I understand is that Mr. Ciancia shot the TSA agent point blank, went through the checkpoint and up an escalator, turned around and saw the gentleman who was shot moving and came back and finished the job and then went on into the terminal. So that leads to this question. TSA agents are not law enforcement officers, and so therefore they are not armed, nor are they, as far as I understand, protected by things like Kevlar vests. Had those two things been in place, perhaps even the damage that Mr. Ciancia did perhaps might not have done. Might this change the policy then for arming TSA agents?
Well, I think that there will be a debate about that. And would TSA people be wearing vests from now on? It might be a personal choice. A lot has to do with what John Pistole, the head of TSA, decides to do. But going to your point, which I think is an important one, when we go through and we queue up to go through the security checkpoint, if you look around you, oftentimes you do see police, but oftentimes you don't. In this particular instance, police were removed from that particular vantage point. I think in hindsight, we could say, if the police were there and it was noticed by Mr. Ciancia, would that have changed the outcome? It might have, because we're dealing with a timeline of 60 seconds. It only takes 10 seconds to unload 15 rounds. He had a banana clip of 30 rounds, so he was able to go upstairs, breach the security, watch poor Mr. Hernandez twisting, and then come down and finish him off. So I think your point is well taken. If the police officers were there, they might have prevented him from coming back down the stairs and shooting Mr. Hernandez and killing him. And then they had to chase him and engage him in a firefight. So I think we have a lot to look at here, and I do believe there'll be measured changes, and they should be.
Indeed. Moving on to the investigation briefly before we run out of time with you, I am sure that law enforcement is gathering all the information they possibly can about this gentleman. And I'm asking you to speculate here. But do you think that he will be questioned without his rights being read to him?
No, I don't think so. They will, the government, in this case the FBI, because he is facing federal charges, including a capital crime punished by the death penalty. He will be advised of his rights as soon as he's cognizant, and they will have to have the word of the consulting physicians. And undoubtedly, the government will do everything in its power to get him represented by counsel. They are not going to risk jeopardizing this case by doing something that would be unacceptable in the court of the law. You do not want to poison evidence at this point. He's in custody. He's disarmed. He doesn't pose a threat to the public. Do things right.
And very, very briefly, Jack, is there anything that law enforcement can do to identify these, if you will, lone wolves before they're able to do damage like Paul Ciancia?
Well, I think recently, as you're probably aware, Debbie, that the TSA has adopted largely the Israeli model, where they are profiling, and that's a word we don't like to use too often. They are using people in lines at various parts in the airport, watching the public come and go. And they have developed profiles to say, listen, this person is acting inconsistent with a normal passenger. They also obviously have armed, undercover air marshals on many domestic flights. And so they're doing everything that I believe is reasonable. But I do think that trying to target, harden, and protect that critical area where everybody is in line to go through the screening will be something that they'll look long and hard at and probably insist on police presence. Trying to control the security in a large airport with multiple terminals and thousands of people coming and going. Debbie, what do you and I do when we go to the airport? We carry our luggage.
Right.
How realistically are we going to erect screening devices out on the parking lot, out in the entrance to the airport? Are we going to be screening? Can you imagine what the lines would be like? I don't think the public will put up with it.
Yeah. We will see. We will see. It's unfortunate that it takes situations like this to bring about some sort of change. Jack, we're going to have to stop the conversation right now, but thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.
See you. Bye-bye.